Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Raw Law Unfiltered with none other than your friend, your host, your moderator, the DUI guy at your service. And with me here I have three very special guests: Kris, John, and Hilary. I will let them introduce them in just themselves in just a moment, but as a brief introduction, today I'm doing something I have not done in the past. I mean, I've done interviews. We've interviewed Colonel Kurtz on this channel. We have interviewed Morgan Tremaine. We had other interviews, other guests on my channel. Today, we're doing something a bit special. So I've been reached out, believe initially by Hilary, and then she connected me with her husband. That's the one right down there. Her husband John, who is an attorney, and they started telling me about this multi-million-dollar treasure by this guy named Fenn Trees or Fenn Forest or Forrest Fenn. I don't know. There's a lot of nature themes involved in all this. So allow me to turn it over, if you'll don't mind, just very briefly, starting with you, Kris. We're going to go down the chain: Kris, John, and then Hilary. If you don't mind introducing yourselves and just telling us what is this about? What is this multi-million-dollar treasure hunt, and how are you involved in it?
Yeah, so I got involved in it about 7, 8 years ago. My brother is a little bit more of an adventurous person and said, I need someone to go with me to get this $1 million treasure. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, Google Forrest Fenn. And it had already gone viral by then. And so I jumped in and went with him. He eventually dropped out, but I really got into the Forrest Fenn hunt. I actually met my now husband as a fellow treasure hunter. And we run a YouTube show called Calazars. And he's in chat. Hello. And the treasure's been found 2 years ago, but we are still a part of this because there has been lawsuit after lawsuit. People passed away. Again, people are coming together, getting married. It's been a pretty interesting situation. So I'll say I'm a treasure hunter. I couldn't have said that before. I didn't find the treasure, so I don't really know if I am, but that's what we do, and we have fun doing it.
Treasure hunter, not treasure finder, sadly. Right, Kris?
Exactly.
John?
Okay, so when Kris says lawsuit after lawsuit, that's sort of where I come in. My name is John Ganga. I have a law firm called Ganga and Associates. We're business and entertainment and intellectual property litigators based in Los Angeles. And I happen to have a wife named Hilary, who you'll meet in a minute, she gets involved in all these crazy things, including this treasure hunt that she got involved with this guy, Forrest Fenn. She doesn't know Forrest. Kris does, by the way. Well, nobody knows Forrest now because he's dead. But in any event, so that's how I got involved. And at one point, Kris had me on her show to talk about some legal issues. And there's a ton of, I assume most of your viewers are interested in legal issues. And there's a ton of legal issues that arise out of these hunts. And in fact, Hilary is doing a hunt right now where she's published a children's story with clues to a $10,000 treasure that she'll tell you about. And I had to do a lot of the legal work there to make sure everything was, on the up and up. And who knows what'll happen at the end of the day if and when someone finds it. So
yeah, and he charged me an arm and a leg for all that legal work.
You should see how much she owes me. I mean, she owes me and not more than my kids. My kids owe me millions of dollars for raising them, but she owes me even more.
Good luck getting paid on that, John.
Yeah, I know. I just hope that someone takes care of me in my old age, which is coming very soon. All right, Hilary, it's to you.
Okay, so I'm Hilary Ganga. And I was a Forrest Fenn searcher, and I'm also a treasure hunt creator now because I was inspired by Forrest Fenn and some of the treasure hunts that came before him. But how I got involved was I just heard about this treasure hunt. It might have been a news story. And I immediately got all the books. So he wrote a poem that Kris will tell you about in a little bit. But he said you should also read all the books he wrote. So I bought every single book, his memoirs, every book that was mentioned in his memoirs. And my kids, who are in college now, they were very young at the time. And we really worked on it together. So you know those big white rolls of paper you get at Home Depot to put on like tables for birthday parties? Yeah. We bought that. We had it pinned up all over our house, the hallways, the kitchen, the bedroom, and we would work crazy on it, every day. And it was so much fun, really a fun activity with the family, because who doesn't want to be a pirate, right? Even grown-ups, kids, and find $1 million treasure. So we worked on it, and then life gets in the way, right? Homework, soccer games, whatever. So we put it down, always thinking we would go back and find the treasure, because absolutely we knew where it was, right? And then someone found it, and we were like, darn. And with that, though, came a lot of controversy, which Kris and John and, we'll all talk about, because still to this day, people think the finder really did not find it, or there were some shenanigans going on. So, but anyway, that's who I am.
And well, this is why we're all here, to kind of get, I don't know if facts is going to be a loaded term, but as best of facts as we can, I suppose. Okay, so let's dive in, and feel free to jump in on this, as everybody has something else to bring to the table. This is why we're having kind of like a multi-layered, multi-person discussion. Who was Forrest Fenn? What was he about? What is unique about this particular treasure? Which full disclosure, I have never been a part of a treasure hunt. Okay, I've heard about them. I think I remember being in college and seeing, just minding my own business and seeing people running around looking for something, and me asking them, like, what are you all doing here? And they're like, well, we're on a treasure hunt. We're trying to find like a box of Red Bull. It was like 4 Red Bulls or whatever that was stacked away somewhere in the Student Activity Center at the University of Louisville. It was like many, many years ago. But that's my only exposure. So who was Forrest Fenn? What was his motivation? Why? Who, what, where, when, and why?
That's a Kris question.
Yeah, definitely a Kris question.
Yeah, so Forrest was an Air Force pilot, and then turned into an art dealer in Santa Fe, kind of to the famous. And he got cancer in 1988. And he always said, I'm going to throw my bones in this special spot. Well, he didn't die. He thought he was going to die, and he didn't die. And then he said, there's too many kids on the texting machines, is what he called it. And he wanted people to get out in the wilderness. So he put this big box of gold and jewels and things together, and he decided just to do it. He was a maverick. He was on the edge. He was an archaeologist. He bought a Pueblo, and he was raided by the FBI and he was cleared. So he really lived life on the edge. So when he did this, he really did it to get people out into nature. I emailed him and said, I'm getting ready to go out. Boots, they call it boots on the ground, for the first time. I'm a desk person. Am I okay? I made it a mile today, hiking. I've been training. And he's like, this is for you. Yeah, he messaged me back. And then we had years of correspondence and events we did and all of that. So he really wanted to get people more out in the wilderness. He grew up as a fishing guide at 13 in Yellowstone. He lived in Texas and as a kid, but they went up every summer in Yellowstone. So he was this outdoorsman, this fly fisherman, and he thought the kids had really lost that. So that was his initial reason for wanting, or what he said his initial reason was for getting out there. He wanted more people to get out there. The first couple of years, it was pretty small. And then he got into Hemispheres magazine, and his story of his treasure, multi-million-dollar treasure, was out there, and it went viral. And so it started a social phenomenon that he didn't expect. There were searchers who had died that he did not think they would put themselves in harm's way or, be that dedicated to this. He thought this would be a hobby, and this really turned into hundreds of thousands of people, events, famous people. Ashton Kutcher, he was a treasure hunter. There was a lot of famous people involved in the hunt, and it kind of took off on him in both a good and bad way. Because when people didn't find it, they started, I think 2015 was the first lawsuit. I went out there, I found it, it wasn't there, I'm suing you. And the lawsuits began, and the deaths began, and it was just an intense time. So that's kind of a high level. I know a lot of people haven't heard in your chat of this. So I tried. Did I miss anything? Hilary or John, of like who this was or why this happened?
Yeah, I think I heard of it. I think Hilary and I first heard of it. He was on like a 60 Minutes or something like that.
Yeah, it
Or a
was
Today Show,
Sunday
the Today
Morning,
Show.
or a 2020 or something
Yeah.
like that. And that's how we heard about it. And that was probably in the early 2010s, I think, because our kids were pretty young still.
Yeah.
Might have even been it before that. I don't know, but that's how we heard of it.
Yeah, but then it really, like Kris said, it really took off. Literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people started searching. And that's when all the controversy and all the shenanigans started, really.
Yeah, and we didn't realize, by the way, that I mean, I don't know if this pre-existed Fenn or not, but we discovered that there's like a whole treasure hunting community out there. Larry, I'm like you. I'm a lawyer. I sit behind a desk. I go to court.
Hey, at least you're dressed like one. I'm wearing
I
shirt because that's
I got my poker shirt on.
I'm definitely not dressed for success
I figured I
today.
should look the part since I'm going to be on your show. So,
But
I am wearing jeans, by the way. So.
Oh, there you go. So, you're
But
half
I
a lawyer today, from the waist up.
Yeah, well, that's we're all lawyers from the waist up anymore with Zoom, so that's what we do.
But
when
I
we go
have
to
to
court.
say, who knew there was a whole treasure hunting community? I mean, I didn't even know when I was hunting for the treasure with my kids. I knew. So there was an announcement that the treasure was found, and I was shocked. We were all blown away because I thought we would go back and get the treasure like many, many, many other people did. And that's when I discovered, because I wanted to find out more information about this. That's how I discovered Kris and her channel. And there's a whole big community on social media just filled with treasure hunters. And it was really cool to get involved. I'm sorry I didn't get involved while I was searching, but there's some really great people. There's some not so great people. Like any community, there's a lot going on there.
Sure.
A lot of drama.
So let's, I think everyone is curious. If anybody knows the answer to this, what was Fenn's motivation to do this? Because here's the bottom line. I know you already alluded to the fact that he wanted kids to, get out more and all that. So first of all, he passed away, right?
Yes.
He's
Shortly after the treasure
allegedly,
was found.
right? Apparently, there's also a conspiracy theory out there that he's still alive and all that. We're not going to get into that, but assuming that he has passed, I guess my first question is: did he know that he was like his doom was impending? I know he beat cancer a while back, but an individual that is on the brink of death, I can imagine has nothing to lose and might as well, go all out, because this. Estimated it's somewhere between 1.5 and $3 million box of items,
right?
Just to rather than leave it for his kids, rather than leave it for his spouse if he had one, rather than leave it to his friends or his pastor, he takes and buries it or hides it, somewhere out in the wilderness. What do we think, or what do we know based on the writings in his blog that I know that he kept? Do we know was his motivation for doing particularly that? Do we have an answer?
Well, I'd like to start, and I'll pass it on to Kris because she knows more. But just as a searcher and not an expert like Kris, at face value, it was to get families, like Kris said, out of nature, bring families together without their electronics so they can really bond and do something that's fun. Like I said, who doesn't want to be like a pirate searching for $1 million treasure? And that happened. The unofficial reason that many people think is he wanted his fame, his legacy.
Okay.
Yeah, his legacy to be this eccentric man that, hid this multi-million-dollar treasure somewhere in the Rockies, and he wanted his name to live on forever, that he did this great thing. Kris, you probably could talk better about this.
Well, I think it was really twofold. I mean, I think he had set up his family. I had a parent pass away, and so we actually had some discussion on this of what to leave, how to leave it, how do you do things right, and so we had some correspondence about this, and actually just some sit down talks about it. He set up his family. His family, I believe, has been it's not that this was all he had. He had plenty of assets, and he left his family in a good position. His wife passed 28 days after him. And so that they were all cared for very well. I think he always pushed the line of these types of things. And I would think if I am at this treasure hunt went on for over 10 years. And so if you look at that, he didn't need that money readily. This would, if you see his home and you see the pictures, all you have to do is Google Forrest Fenn and go to images. He was a collector. He had Sitting Bull's peace pipe. He had so many different, they've done auctions of so many of his items. He had hundreds of thousands of dollars of collections all around. So this was, I think, a passion project for him. This was where he wanted to say, I want to give back. And, he gave to universities, he gave to churches, he gave to others. This was his one. I think that he's like, this one's kind of for me because I want them to get out there and be like I was. I found my love in the Rocky Mountains. I want them out in the Rocky Mountains. And so this one, even though it's philanthropic, it was philanthropic for him, not tax write-off, but more for him. That's my opinion. Again, it's not all, based on facts. But I did get some time to talk to him about this very conversation. So, and I think he wanted, and he liked to meet with families, and that became controversial. He met with searchers. He talked to the kids. He met my kids. He gave them gifts. Kids, both of my kids. And he loved to hear the adventures. This mended some families and they got out there and he wanted to hear about it. It was a little bit easier in the beginning couple of years. I see Sassy's in here. I know she was there in the beginning when there was these meetups only had 10 or 15 people at them. And he used to have backyard barbecues and bring the searchers over to his house. Well, then we had events that there would be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And it was too much on him at the end because once it got viral, you couldn't have access to everyone.
Right.
And I want to say it was definitely controversial because hunters were totally pissed about it because saying, why does he invite some searchers to the house where he did give hints, which I'm going to ask John about the legal aspects of that, because that was such BS, because people are totally
to
obsessed.
The people who are not invited to the barbecue. Yeah.
He definitely gave hints. And I want to say he was controversial.
What makes you so special, right? Yeah.
Yes. And he was controversial from the start because to this day, well, not anymore probably, but people don't think he ever actually hid the treasure chest. That was a big rumor going around for several years. He's just saying this. He wants people to get out. He didn't, actually hide a chest. But, and since then, there's been more and more and more controversy, even up until where it was found. And people believe he wanted to put an end to it. He gave either the finder a nudge or just found someone that could pretend to find it. There's a whole bunch, and we'll get into the conspiracies because that's really so interesting and intriguing.
Speaking of conspiracies, I should have probably addressed this in the beginning. This is like the fifth person asking about your bloody mask. Okay. She is a professional full-time burglar. Okay. She was tasked with burglarizing the house where whoever's going to find the treasure, her job was to go to their house, steal the treasure undetected and bring it back home to John.
Yes.
Herself.
So let me just say, I traveled the other day, and next to me, there was a person that was hacking and not wearing a mask. And
not computer hacking, but cough hacking.
And so I went to get tested. I have no symptoms, but I did test positive for COVID. And even though I am in my own home, I have a house full of people. I want to be very protective over the people. So yeah, I apologize, but I do have a face. So
that's the reason.
Yeah,
we already have conspiracy theories about why you're wearing a mask on stream. So I just wanted to address that real quick.
Funny.
I like that. That's good. I never thought that would have a good side effect of the mask.
So John, I think this is more of a question for you. Let's get into the legality of it. So. And I think it comes into two, if not three different parts. The first is, I already heard that on stream today, I forget who said it, that there was this whole theory by certain treasure hunting individuals who would go out, think, because everybody thinks I solved it. I know where it is. I'm going to go find it. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be famous, blah, 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 blah. this is my moment to shine, right? Well, you go out, you dig, and you're like, it's not here, then it must be a lie. Because I can't possibly be wrong about the
Right.
location.
Right.
It's that schmuck who lied about it, and now you have the lawsuits on that end. And then once the treasure was actually found, then you have all these other lawsuits about, and I believe we had a conversation, this is the third one, potentially, of somebody who said that they found it, but they didn't take it,
Right.
right?
Yes.
So let's touch upon those. Let's start with the pre-finding of the treasure. What was going on there?
Yeah. So, and Kris can elaborate on this a little bit more because she's more familiar with what specific lawsuits got filed. But I do believe that while the hunt was going on, there were people who were convinced they had the location, and they didn't find it at the location, and there were lawsuits that came out of that. Is that right, Kris?
Correct.
Right. So
I mean, all the way back 4 or 5 years.
Right, back to like 2015. So there was those, and then the other thing that Kris mentioned, and I think Hilary mentioned as well, is that
Did anything come of those?
yes, no, I don't think so.
Well, I mean, one got all the way up to the Supreme Court, but they have that gentleman is now having his accounts garnished because he was slapped with all of the lawyer's fees for every single step and appeal. He went all the way up. And
okay. Because I know
that started way back.
Okay, there's another one that's going on right now. That's the guy's experiencing the same thing. But
yeah.
So pre the finding of the treasure, there's those lawsuits that came about by those people who thought they knew where it was and it wasn't there. Then there's the issue of, and I don't know if there are any lawsuits that came out of this, but I know there was a lot of controversy about this, and Kris has mentioned this, Hilary's mentioned this, is that during the hunt, Fenn would talk to people. I mean, and have people over to his house, and there was some concern that some people had more or better information than other people, and is I don't know if any lawsuits came out of that, but it seems to me that there's a legal issue there as to, well, is that really fair to the other hunters who have sort of an implied contract by virtue of participating in this event and by virtue of being told how to find the treasure, which all of the clues supposedly are in this single poem that he wrote, although there are hints in other writings of his. But then there's these people that supposedly had, access to him and better information. Now, it turns out none of those people found the treasure, by the way. So there are those lawsuits.
But at the time, it looked a little sketchy.
It looked a little sketchy, right? That's right. And then there's at the end when someone does find it, and there's all these theories that, well, did this guy really find it? Was he set up by Fenn to find it because he knew he didn't have long for this world, and he didn't want to burden his family with all the crap that he went through the last few years of his life with all this controversy. So, and there was a lawsuit that arose out of that just got finished in the Superior Court of New Mexico, is on appeal now, and the gentleman has been slapped with about $160,000 worth of sanctions.
Not only did he not find the treasure, but he found a negative treasure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I should add in, Forrest was going through a lot. Like, one of the treasure hunters believed if he kidnapped Forrest's granddaughter and held her for ransom, then that is how he got the treasure chest. And he had to be, there were so many stalking orders and protective orders. He was put in jail. There was people that broke into his home. There was people that, death threats. There was constant, I will say, challenging situations that he didn't expect. And it came out after the fact that he was actually looking at trying to call off the treasure hunt and this was about 6 months before it was found, which fuels the controversy. And, does he have a legal right to do that? And that was, I don't know the answer. I was going to throw it at you of if he did give someone a nudge because he couldn't figure out how to make this go away. Yeah. And end it. He actually drafted the announcement of this is over. This has been too much on my family and lawyers, and I thought this was going to be fun. My grandchild now has a man that has a protective order against him for.
Welcome to the real world, Fenn.
Yes.
Where nobody plays fair and people are fucking crazy.
Yeah.
What about all these? Sorry, I want to hear this, Hilary. What about all these individuals who I understand would either sell their homes or like buy like a mobile home and go to the Rockies, leave their jobs, abandon their families, their friends, and make a life out of this treasure hunt. I mean,
Yeah, so if you think about, we have 100,000, let's just say, sometimes people think more or less. We have 100,000 people. Out of those 100,000 people, we're going to have people that become obsessed, just like if it was gambling or something else. We're going to have divorces. We're going to have suicides. We're going to have marriages. We're going to have friendships. We're going to have all that happen. It gets an additional spotlight when it happens in this hunt. But there are searchers that did exactly that, and they're filing for bankruptcy. But there's wonderful ones. We had a searcher wedding where we had 50, 100 searchers as they watched me and my husband get married, who I met during this hunt. So I know I know we're going to focus on the legal aspects. So a lot of that happened, I think, happens in society already, but this definitely puts a magnifying glass on it.
Kris, can you talk about the 7%ers? What like Fenn said about the 7%ers?
So he was quoted in one interview, and it kind of took off as a terminology in our community called the 7%ers. And he says, and I'm paraphrasing, "I am now convinced that 7% of our society is certifiably crazy now that I have certain searchers." Some would email him hundreds of times a day. Some of them left their homes, left their families. They were committed into psychiatric facilities involuntarily. Some of them were, one of them that got arrested called me the next day. He's like, "Help, I've been arrested." And I mean, they're digging up graves in Yellowstone, and the government
which is a crime, by the way.
And yes, they went to jail, and they're paying a lot of money. But is it Forrest's fault for not, or their fault, or somewhere in between? I don't know. And Jack broke the law. And when Jack broke the law, he brokered a deal with Yellowstone.
Jack is the guy who found it.
Supposedly found it.
Supposedly. All right. So let's get into that. Let's get into the finding of this treasure.
Okay.
What year was it finally found?
Well, it was found in 2019, but Jack waited to pick it up until June 5th or June 6th of 2020. He wanted to get some tax exemption status in another country. So in my opinion, and it came out later. We didn't know at the time. The community was told June 6th of 2020, the treasure is found, stop looking for it. But we found out later through some discovery of some of these lawsuits, it was actually found in 2019.
Okay, so hold on. That is terrifying to me, like in my mind, because let's say I am Jack. Jack is the name of the person who found it, right?
Right.
Allegedly.
Okay, so I want allegedly. I want all these tax exemptions. I want all these, blah blah blah. There is no way in hell that I'm just going to leave it in the hole or whatever and let it sit there. And I'll come back in 9 months and collect. I don't believe that.
And let's even go further. Someone died in that gap between when he found it and when. Now, did he leave it in the same spot or not? I don't know, but he has left enough evidence.
And not leaving it in the same spot. Well, now are you the owner, or did you re-abandon it?
Right.
John and I probably could have a full day discussion about what it means to be the owner of the property, because this is not something that you normally encounter. Essentially, personal property law is going to be applicable here. That's the bottom line. But then the question is, number one, jurisdiction. I imagine, so this was buried in the Rockies. So was it Colorado? Was it found?
It was in Yellowstone, and Yellowstone actually is a part of all the lawsuits with motions to intervene to silence Jack.
In Wyoming.
But it's in Yellowstone. Yeah.
On federal land.
On federal land that Forrest was not allowed to put it on. So none of this came out from Jack. Jack is silenced. This has all come out with discovery of these lawsuits.
Right. No, I understand that. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to clarify for the viewers, myself, and anybody, because we all have questions about this. So, okay. So the treasure is finally collected from the location in Yellowstone, wherever it was, allegedly, by Jack, on June 6, 2020. Everyone is being told, no more searching. Stop looking. The treasure has been found. Commence the lawsuits.
Yes.
The lawsuits are filed by Monday morning.
By Monday morning. So
Yeah.
who's filing? Why? Over what? What's the jurisdiction? What's going on? Why are we suing? Who's suing and for what?
Well, there was already an active lawsuit by someone who said he went to try to find it, and he actually got served that Thursday for that lawsuit. And then Saturday it was announced. And on Monday morning, a searcher said, I was actually at my site. I believe searched or sued the anonymous finder and then filed a subpoena against Forrest to say, you need to tell me who it was. Because Forrest also said when it was announced, I'm not saying who found it. I'm not saying where it was found. Basically, I'm done. We're all done now. And we're all sitting there like we don't get the solution, which he has said on record, people would get the solution. And he also said there's no legal issues. And it ended up there was significant legal issues. And he was trying to protect the finder from that. So the subpoena went to the courts and was granted, and Forrest was fighting it and trying to keep what we now know as Jack's name anonymous. Forrest passes. The estate says we're spending no more money defending
When
this.
does Forrest pass? I'm sorry.
September 7th, 2020. It was
September
found in
7th,
June.
2020. So this is 3 months and 1 day after the treasure is allegedly found.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, continue. Sorry.
So the subpoena now comes out and says, okay, representative, the daughter, Zoe, you now need to give us the information. And now they're in the spot of, do they keep defending what Forrest was doing and try to stop? Or they decided, the family and Jack came out the day before that subpoena was going to be handing over the information to the courts of the finder. And he came out and said, I'm the finder and here's who I am. And I will legally protect myself. The family put out a statement to say, this is who it is. This is not just some crazy, because by that time we had about 50 people saying they had the treasure chest and they were the finder. So he needed to have some legitimacy, and that was provided. And so that lawsuit was eventually withdrawn, but that was the pinnacle of getting Jack's identity. But that's all we knew at that point. We knew his name. We did not know. That was actually what helped then. There were social media accounts that he had deleted, that there's ways to undelete things on the internet. There was a Puerto Rican tax exemption application that people found because it's public, but they needed his name. And that's what changed everything, is his name was out then on just early December of 2020. And then it was madness. And through many other lawsuits then being filed is when discovery happened. Emails between Jack and Forrest were subpoenaed.
Okay, so hold on. Let's take a step back. So in a lawsuit, as John and I know, there has to be a cause of action.
Cause of action,
right? And for those unfamiliar, a cause of action is basically, you can't just sue. I'm suing you just because I can. You can't just, I want your stuff, or whatever. You have to have a legitimate legal reason, a justification, legal justification as to why I'm suing you. And of course, damages. Damages are what I'm suing you for, what I want to recover when all things are said and done, if I win. So I don't know, Kris or John, please fill me and my chat on this. What were the causes of action in these lawsuits in September, October, November, December of 2020?
Well, I'll give you the layman's and then John can translate it.
Sure.
The one was, I had the actual solve. Someone hacked into my texting device or email, got the information, went and took it. So I need the finder's information to find out. And here's some text messages and that's actually the subpoena that was granted.
Wow.
That's what got Jack's information out. The other lawsuits were fraud. One gentleman that is actually in the courts now, he believes Forrest is still alive. I was at that trial. He believes of some really odd things. I know that sounds. So his litigation was based under fraud, and he believes he found the treasure chest. He went to go get a shovel, and when he came back, Forrest had moved it. And Forrest did that for several years because Forrest was affectionate to his girlfriend, and his girlfriend had never met him and had an officer testify in court. She didn't know Forrest. She didn't know him. She didn't know any. So it was a very
that's
odd.
A facepalm lawsuit. That's a straight up.
It was
facepalm
really
Yeah.
challenging to even be in the room. But So that was the second one. The third one was, and this is what most of them were. I went to go get it, and when I got there, it wasn't there. So you either moved it or fraud. So you can translate it, John, into what you think that means.
Well, yeah, I would say the legal translation would be fraud. There was a misrepresentation of material fact upon which the plaintiff relied to his detriment, as a consequence of which the plaintiff suffered damages. Those are the elements of fraud. Or there is a false promise. So that's a different type of fraud, but it's a similar. You got to you make a statement. It's not true. It's relied upon by someone who believes it to be true. As a consequence of that reliance, that person suffers damages. But the problem is, like, for example, in the case of the person who claims to have been hacked and Jack discovered her solve, for example, she would have to actually prove that she was right, that she actually really did have the solve, but it never got to that point. And there are a number of people who have said, that they had the solve, and that Forrest arranged for the treasure to either be moved or have someone else find it in the meantime. So that was the belief that a lot of people had with the ultimate finders, that he was actually set up to find it. And that's what created the controversy. And a lot of it came from, to me, and you gotta, as a lawyer, you look at the human element of all this as well. You say, well, what gets people really riled up about these things to make them think, hey, I want to take legal action? And there was, when you think about all these people, these hundreds of thousands of people, the 100,000 people more or less over a period of 10 years that had varying degrees of investment of time and effort and sweat equity into this project, at the end of it, to find out that someone found it, but they're not saying who it was or where it was incredibly unsatisfying for all of those people.
Mm-hmm.
And Hilary, as a hunter, by the way,
yes,
she was outraged. She was going around the house ranting and raving about it.
Oh yeah, I do want to say, okay, so just say you put a couple of years, and some people put multiple years into, reading the books and searching and going to the Rockies multiple times, and then you hear it's found. That's disappointing enough, but oh my gosh, you want to know, was I close? Where was it found? Was I not in the area? You want to hear the solution, and people, including me, were absolutely outraged, and that he would not tell where it was, and his excuse was totally lame. He said, this place was special to Forrest, and I don't want a lot of people going there and ruining the land and messing up the land, which was just, that even fueled everyone more. People were outraged. A lot of people thought he was put up to this. He was not the real finder. And the worst was that nobody believed, they might believe now, was he found the treasure chest. He left it there because he wanted to make sure everything was legal, knowing that thousands and thousands of people are searching for this multi-million-dollar treasure chest. And he just left it there and thought, oh yeah, I'll go back and get it tomorrow after I make sure everything's legal. Come on. Right.
Well, and I had the discussions with, we wanted to get we had the last interview with Forrest before he passed. And so I asked him right after it was found, I said, you need to put it out. And he goes, everyone's going to go away. It's found. And I thought, and I went back and forth. I said, it's not possible. You don't understand. Even I'm not talking about the 7%. There's people that are going to hang on to this until we get closure. And he just was like, no way. You'll see. And then I remember him emailing me once and going, what if I put out the state? Would that be enough? And I said, no, I'm sorry. I'm just telling you, as an avid person that was in this, we need the solve. We need the location. And he's like, but what about just the state? And he just kept saying that. And I was like, no, you're not understanding. If you put 10 years into this, and we have searchers from Australia and Japan and the UK over 5 and 10 years, let alone all through the US. And I just said, I don't think you're understanding your audience. You need to put it out. And we actually had an interview. We did what's called the Fenn finale, where we all kind of said goodbye to him. And I was scheduled to do that interview a week later, which was Saturday, and he passed 2 days before.
Oh, God.
I just,
For there never was a story of more woe than that of Juliet and her Romeo. Shakespeare was, if Shakespeare was alive today, I think he would replace that with Forrest Fenn and his interview.
well, now to be clear though, he said, you can't ask me the 9 clues and you can't ask me the exact final location. And I sent him a set of questions about 4 or 5 days beforehand. And I said, what about this? Like, what was the word that was key? Some things that searchers would care about. And he's like, all that's on the table. I'm like, okay, even though we won't get, we'll get something satisfactory. And then when he, it
What
was
a
when
bummer.
Chris-
I can see the pain in your
oh,
eyes.
it's
Yeah.
still to this day, that was
I
2 years
feel
ago.
it.
And I just went, and you know, when you lose someone that, you know, I felt like I had a personal connection with him over the years. You lose a friend, and then you have the other side of, oh, I was supposed to be there. I was, you know, and there was 2 of us going, me and another searcher, not Mike. And it was just so, yeah, it was tough.
When Chris says the 9 clues, I just want to say she's talking about the poem. So he wrote all 9 clues in one poem, and that's what she's talking about when she says the 9 clues. Yeah.
You know, I was kind of wondering about this as you were talking, Chris. You know, him being diagnosed with cancer in like 1988, you know, beating it, and then in 2010 or thereabouts, burying this treasure. I kind of can't help but wonder, you know, how certain things like motivate people and help them either stay alive or fight the fight a little bit longer. I
Right.
can't help but wonder, like, his death is just so coincidentally timely with like the finding of this treasure. I wonder if this treasure just kept him alive for all these extra years past, you know, like the last 10 years, and in some capacity. I just can't help but wonder. And as soon as like, you even called it the Fenn finale, and then he fucking dies.
Right.
Like, he doesn't, there's this, I'll show you a finale. You want one? Here I am, you know?
Well,
like,
I'll give you the most heart-wrenching part of the interview. I'd never done interviewing. We were working on a documentary. I had my direction team there, but I gave the interview. And I was ready with all these questions, and I prepared. But I asked him this question, and it made me stop. I had a really hard time for a second. I said, you're getting a lot of scrutiny for meeting with searchers and talking with searchers and being a part of the community rather than removing yourself as the originator. Why do you do that? And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, what else do I have left? And we put that out. And I just remember this, exactly what you just said, by his answer. And he paused before he said it, and he paused after. And I'm like, you have such an enriched family. You were a maverick, an Air Force person. You had this gallery, but it really showed me his small glimpse into one part of his life. The searchers got him through his last 10 years with their adventures. And when the first time I met him, you would have thought I was the famous person, because I walked in and he's like, tell me all about you. And it was like, Forrest, what about Sitting Bull's Peace Type? And what about this? And he's like, he wanted to know about people. And it just, every day he wanted to know their stories. And it made,
what a gentleman.
Yeah, it made me stop. And he did it with everyone that came in. I mean, my now husband, he met, tell me about you. I want to know about your kids. I want to know about your life. What do you do? You know, so anyway.
Yeah. So, okay. So that's, you know, we talked about 2020, his passing, more lawsuits. Jack's name is out public. So this was just, you know, last year of 2021 and this year, 2022, let's call it, you know, 18, 20 months or so since the commencement of all these, you know, post finding of the treasure lawsuits, almost 2 years, let's call it. What are we seeing? What is happening in the courts right now?
So the final, no, you go ahead.
No, well, I know only generally. Chris actually attended the latest trial. There was a fellow named McCracken who filed a lawsuit. I think it was a fraud lawsuit in New Mexico, and there was one other pending that I think has now been dismissed also. So I don't think there's any left. But Chris, you could tell us about the McCracken lawsuit, because there's a lot of interesting day-to-day. She was literally there, heard the testimony, and saw the exhibits and all that stuff. So,
and I was just fascinated by it. I'm not a legal person, but so several of the cases were filed in, I don't know what the term is, regular court, not probate court. and they were also filed in probate court. So as they were dismissed in the...
And let me just stop you right there. Probate court is court that is determining after a person passes away,
right,
where their property goes, how it's distributed, and so on. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kris.
Well, so the others all went to, I call it regular court. I know there's a better term for it. And
Civil
as their
court.
civil court, and as their courts were either being heard or thrown out, they would get dismissed from the probate side. So all of them got dismissed. The only one that didn't file over on the civil side was McCracken. So basically, McCracken was afforded the opportunity of depositions of the family, email discovery, emails between Jack and Forrest. And he owns one of these forums, and he posted several of the discovery documents that he got, like the day of the find. I just left the treasure, and I want you to give me permission to go pick it up and bring it to you. And so everybody's going crazy. This was just a few months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, over the summer. And then we're going into court. And during court, they put a lot more of the emails and evidence into the actual record that then you can go and purchase at 35 cents a page. And I can't tell you how much I've spent of getting the actual documents. So there's emails between, we all thought Jack's not even a searcher. There were emails between Jack and Forrest in 2018. We didn't know about that until the court case happened. So the court case happens in summer. And I will say most people, we had a lot of direct evidence then. He had 30 days then to say whether he was going to appeal. That was about a month ago. He did. And then he just filed his, and I don't know the legal term, basically what his grounds are for appeal, which during the trial, Forrest's side didn't even have to present a case. They dismissed it right after he was done. There was a motion to dismiss of there's no evidence, lack of evidence, and they dismissed it without even hearing the other side. So I think that's an indicator it's probably not going to be successful. But they're walking through that now, and I've been told ballpark, it's a 3 to 6 month process to go through the appeals process. But he is currently in the appeal process, and he just submitted his declaration of something that I just got a hold of.
So it sounds like what we would call a directed verdict or a motion for non-suit by the defendant, who says that basically the standard is, even accepting everything that the plaintiff put on as true, he cannot prevail as a matter of law. Mm-hmm. So that's the standard. So the standard on appeal is going to be, is there any substantial evidence, if construed in the light most favorable to the plaintiff, that would have permitted a verdict in his favor, in which case they would have to send it back down. So now I understand, Kris, that McCracken represented himself, right? So he was.
And what was his cause of action in case I missed it?
Fraud. He believes Forrest moved the treasure chest continuously for several years.
He's one of the ones that alleged moving. Got it. Okay.
And he was mandated to pay $100,000 of punitive damages and $66,000 of lawyers' fees. So those are the two. He has a lien against his property. He's trying to fight that. So he's appealing, etc. So there was 4 reasons why his appeal. He said that he wasn't given proper time. The judge, he requested that one certain week that the hearing be filed. And I was in that hearing. And basically the judge put it on a certain day, I think Friday, and he wanted it on a Monday. And he was like, I was coming in from out of town and I'm pro se. I needed those 3 extra days. And the judge didn't explain to me. And I talked to a couple of lawyer friends. They're like, the judge doesn't explain to you why they give you a time frame. They ask you if you have any other court hearings and things, but you just not being available isn't a good one.
That's
So 2, he said he had evidence, even though it was more opinions than what we hold the legal term is evidence. And there was a couple of others.
So the reason why he has been slapped with all of these legal fees, did the defense allege some type of frivolous lawsuit, malicious prosecution? What did they counter him with? Do you all know?
Yeah, it was abuse of process, malicious intent, And then at the end, the day before the hearing happened, and this was admitted into court, he tried to extort $2 million and said that, I'll just say that Forrest maybe have had, wasn't perfect. And he had some allegations of, he had some things, some dirt against Forrest that he would publicize if they didn't pay him. It was either $2 or $5 million. And that not only had a civil consequence, it potentially could have a criminal consequence. It was brought up in court. That was part of his appeal, though, that the judge allowed that in. He said was protected because it was a negotiation between two attorneys. And he had some sort of recording, and the judge didn't allow the recording in, but did allow this email correspondence. So that was the basis of the legal. That's the best I can do from the legality standpoint.
Yeah. So I actually talked to the Fenn estate's lawyer while this was going on, and I asked him actually before the trial started, why haven't you moved to dismiss it? He says, well, they wanted him actually to put on his evidence and then so that they could actually bring a malicious prosecution. I think in New Mexico they call it abuse of process. We have in California we have two separate causes of action, one for abuse of process, one for malicious prosecution. They're two different. They apply to two different things, but in New Mexico there's one, and you can actually recover for it in that trial itself. In California you wouldn't be able to do that. You'd have to bring a separate trial for malicious prosecution. But so that
you could also tack on more hours of work, because trials, just the preparation alone for a trial would be so many hours. So it's kind of like a double whammy in a sense, because not only do you show, you need the evidence, you have better evidence if he testifies or brings the case in, etc. Number one, and then number two, you have just added a ton of hours. Like it's going to hit him like a ton of bricks, and it did. I think you said 66,000 on just that one lawsuit alone. And there's probably either a default judgment, or I don't know how you counter that if you don't have facts to support the fact that you had an actually legitimate lawsuit when there's so much evidence showing to the contrary. So that's why the property.
There were shocking parts of this case that, like, one of the things that made me pause is, so his position was Forrest was stalking his girlfriend and assaulting her, etc. And he subpoenaed her, and an officer comes in and says, she's not going to be here. She has a restraining order against you. She's not your girlfriend. And he said, but she emailed me the other day on my forum. He said, that was me, so we could serve you another restraining order, and you're going to go back to jail. Stop. And it was like, the courtroom was silent. And I'm looking around like, it was such an odd, it was like, how did this get here? Because he didn't understand this woman has several restraining orders. There's been several, and it was odd. It was an event. It was odd.
So I'd like to give my husband a disclaimer.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, I'm giving you a disclaimer. So the reason he was talking to Forrest's attorney was he wasn't hired by one of the crazies. He was actually hired by, it was more someone that's doing like a documentary and a film. John kind of specializes in the, done a lot of film work and stuff like that. So he was definitely not representing one of the crazies. I don't think you would take one of the crazies. I'm sure you would not. So
no, someone did. Yeah, someone did. I was representing someone, and my guy wanted me to contact Fenn's lawyer, said he might have some evidence that could help him. So yeah,
but that even goes to Forrest's attorney sat down with one of the his name's Bill Gorman and had coffee with him during this happening. He's corresponded and emailed and chatted with many searchers. Forrest did too. It seems that, going from a legal perspective, going back to Forrest, is that okay that he did give some hints to some and not to others?
Yeah, no, so as a lawyer, that really bothers me. And that was one of the things that concerned me about Hilary's hunt, is like, so she has a hunt going on right now called.
So yeah, let's talk about that. So first, let me just do this. Chat, if you have any questions, now is the time. I already started a couple of them, but if you have questions to Kris, to John, to Hilary, to myself, as best as I can answer, feel free. This is your time. Go ahead, John. This is the plug.
Well,
So Hilary,
shameless
is
plug.
this the Marks something Marks?
Okay,
Yeah.
Treasure
so
Xavier Marks. So you have a treasure hunt of your own going on. Tell
yes,
us
with
about
my
it.
partner, Sean Cronin. So we were inspired by Forrest Fenn, and some of the hunts that even came before Forrest Fenn, like very famous ones, like The Secret and Masquerade. But anyway, we had so much fun with Forrest. Sean and I wanted to create our own treasure hunt. So, but we wanted to truly make it for the whole family. So it's a children's book. However, all the clues to find a $10,000 treasure hidden somewhere in the continental USA is in the pages of this book. So, I would suggest children working with their older siblings or adults in their life, because there are some puzzles in here that you would probably need help with. Jesse Eisenberg, some of you guys might know him. I think he's most famous for the movie The Social Network. He wrote a page of the book, and there's a clue about him. And if you figure out that's about Jesse Eisenberg, it's also a clue where the treasure is. But every clue that you need to solve where the treasure is in this book. However, a lot of celebrities got on board. And if you go to our Instagram, which is Race for the Treasure, you can see their extra clues. Now, you don't need them to solve the treasure, but they are helpful, like Damon John, Will Wheaton, Jason Alexander. A whole bunch of celebrities have gotten on board. And all the proceeds, by the way, go to the International Child Art Foundation, which is this great organization. They donate art supplies to schools all over the world. There's also kids art in the book. And so it's a really good cause. It's a really fun treasure hunt. And you can get it, of course, on Amazon. But when we get big publicity like this, Amazon seems to sell out really quickly. It takes a while to get it back in. So you can also go to BookBaby in the bookshop to get a copy. So either way, yeah. And it's gotten a lot of great publicity, this being one of the great ones, Larry. So thank you so much. We had an article in the LA Times and also the Guardian in England. So yeah, pretty cool. So I think that's the story, right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Go buy the book, hunt for the treasure, and best of luck to everybody. I suppose.
And we're not responsible or liable for anything. I wrote everything that said we're not.
We waive all liability. If you have questions and lawsuits, please file them in another country.
So Tree, my husband Tree, we call him. He wrote all. Yeah, he wrote all. There's
Is it
like
because he doesn't move and like just kind of like hangs around and collects sunlight every day, or what's the story there?
Well, my partner Sean Cronin, he's the one who came up with that name, because John went to Stanford undergrad, and Sean was like, "Oh God, Stanford, please! Their mascot's a tree. How smart can you be if the mascot's a tree?" So that just caught on, and everyone calls him Tree now, and I like it. I call him some other things, but yeah,
I'm
Tree.
also a
We
hiker.
won't get into that. Okay, this is
so
not the nighttime show, Hillary.
Okay.
What do you want to talk about?
That's for the next show. And so no, I have to say, Larry,
Yeah.
I just want to say something about you. I mean, you are the perfect person, because, you have that sense of adventure and fun mixed with seriousness, and your rendition of Curious George is absolutely brilliant. No, brilliant. As a matter of fact, there's a criminal in this book named Pranksy, who's a spoof on Banksy, which I can't say if the real Banksy's involved or not. I can't say, but just saying. And so you were just like, thank you so much for letting us come on.
And you dress like Pranksy today, as I could see. Right,
yes,
Hillary?
yes.
Indeed.
All right, let's get to some of the questions from the audience. I'm going to try and capture as many as we can in the time we have remaining here. So the Sassy, by the way, she's been in the chat this entire time. She DM'd me on Twitter. She said that she was a part, I think, of this treasure hunt. She knows Kris. She knows Hillary. You both are nodding clearly.
Yeah.
She says, ask Kris about the crazy lawyer lady's lawsuit. I think she was from Chicago.
We've covered that. There was a lawsuit. I won't say whether I won't make any attribution to her, but I will say the lawsuit that got the subpoena, we've already covered that.
Okay.
And there's
All
been
right.
many facets. I know there's additional lawsuits between searchers and things, and I don't know.
I don't want to
anything
throw
about that.
anybody under the bus. This is none of my
Yeah.
business. I
don't.
I'm just the moderator.
Right.
Sassy, I have to say, Sassy is kind of very famous in the treasure hunting community.
Yep.
David Blaine, the very famous magician.
Yeah.
He had a well-known hunt for $100,000 way back when, and Sassy found it, and immediately there were lawsuits back then.
Right.
Oh, I
And
bet.
she messaged me a couple days ago and said, "You're going to be on this show." And I said, "How do you know? We haven't announced like the links and stuff." She's like, "Because I'm a fan." I was like, so we do have some overlap. So yes,
I think I made the thumbnail, the multi-million-dollar treasure hunt, and I announced that. I didn't, and of course I listed your names. I just wrote John, Kris, and Hilary, and she was like, "Oh, it's not Kris so and so," and I'm like, "How did you know that?" And she's like, "Well, I am Sassy. Nice to meet you."
Yeah, and we did a meetup in Detroit, and we all met up and talked about different. She's known to be one of them that can solve it in an hour type of thing, and that's who you have to worry about.
Sassy, stay away from my treasure hunt. I don't want to find it. Stay away.
She got 100,000. She doesn't need no petty $10,000.
Yeah, so that's another reason we made it $10,000. It's small enough that no one's going to bother suing over it.
You say that, John.
I hope so. I mean, it costs $10,000 just to file the damn thing. So
Fender's Keepers says the DUI guy asked Kris why Forrest told her husband, I'm guessing your husband, Mike, not to settle any bets in regards to which state the chest was found, or why Forrest said nothing is as it seems.
Yeah, so post-find, there was a lot of conjecture about, is it going to be found? Or was it really found? Is there shenanigans, etc.? And I'll give you a little bit of the backstory. My husband, Mike, had a bet with another searcher that it was going to be found in Wyoming, because he thought for sure it's his solve. And he emailed Forrest and said, "Well, I guess I got to pay Mike," because he knew both of them. And Forrest said, "Don't pay any bets." And he emailed and said, "Don't pay any bets. Nothing is as it seems." We put that out, and of course that lit everybody on fire. See, it wasn't Wyoming. It wasn't. So you're asking me why Forrest told someone. I'm going to give the lawyer answer. I have no idea what was in Forrest's mind. I believe, and I'm going to be controversial here, and I'm sorry, I believe Jack legally owns the chest, and he is the finder or possession of. I believe there's something more to this ending that we don't know. I don't know if Forrest gave a nudge. I don't know if Jack hacked something. That would be illegal, so I don't want to say that. I believe, because of all this evidence that's come out, I believe there's more to this. And I believe Forrest, maybe, because that was somebody that Forrest was a friend with, that he said, "Don't pay any bets." Forrest said it'll eventually come out. And I think it will, because there's a strong group right now that are researching every single rabbit hole to find out the answers. I'm not going to be one of those people, but I know the answers are out there. So I'd
like to ask a question, John. Does Forrest owe me anything as a searcher? I'm serious. If he put someone up to finding it or nudged him or whatever, I spent lots of money traveling, buying books,
Permission to intervene.
Does he owe me anything?
No, Hilary. No, he doesn't. No.
Can you change your answer, please?
That's a you problem. I'm sorry. John, go ahead. Do you have any follow-up?
Well, no. So look, that's the basis for all these fraud suits, right? Is that there was some misleading going on, or there's this favoritism, in favor of one searcher over another, and so that's the theory that someone like any particular searcher might pursue. One of the things, it seems to me, and I had a potential client call me about this, if you're going to claim some damage that you were harmed by this, you kind of have to prove that you really had the real solution and that you were right. And so that's going to be hard to do.
An extreme.
The other thing is that I think that Kris is now, now resigned herself to, is that having seen all of this evidence that was contemporaneously generated when it happened back in 2018 and 2019. It's not like you're going to make up all these emails and then start throwing them into court. These were actually, evidence that was recorded at the time it was happening. So you can see that it was legitimate that this was going on at the time, and that he really did find it. And the fact that he found it in 2019 and then didn't go and get it until 2020, that creates a question to me, because Kris, I think, alluded to this, that between that time and the time that the announcement was made that the treasure was found, someone actually died. What's the duty at that point? Did Jack have a duty at that point to say, I found it so that no one else can look and risk their lives doing this? I mean, there have been lawsuits about that as well. So, these are fascinating questions for lawyer geeks like me and Larry, who talk about, duty and things like this all the time. And I think that, that's part of what is so still intriguing about the hunt, is that it's still not exactly clear what happened.
Right. And I think the bottom line is, because treasure hunting, and first of all, the treasure hunts are done between private individuals. You don't have the government, hiding treasures and then people looking for them, and then a special statute governing treasure hunting, etc. You don't have corporations involved in this. You have private individuals who, at the end of the day, they don't really have any limits on what they can and cannot do. I can bury a treasure right now and tell one person the location, and they find it, and then what are we going to have? There's just so many different things when it comes to private individuals being involved. Sure, it is unfair, that a certain small group of people are getting more information than another group of people, let's say a larger, like the 1% or the 0.5% or the 1/4% or less, are now privy to this extra info. And little old me, who has spent 7.5 years on this, I don't get that information. That's not fair. Well, it not being fair, is it still legal? Again, that's the
Right.
question.
Okay, can I flip the question?
Please.
So we have a searcher who was searching, if you believe the location that we believe in, she was searching in the right location. She had a friendship with Forrest, and she had a falling out with him. And he told her to go to a different location. She thought they were back to being friends. Everything was fine. He steered her away from the correct location. And she shared the email, and I shared it openly, so it's not like a secret. Does he have any responsibility not to steer someone he didn't want to find the treasure to away from the correct location?
And again, I would fall back on the whole, this is now bordering on defrauding an individual who is on the right track based on the information that he has provided, and now realizing they're so close, having to steer them away, realizing that they're getting too close just because I don't like you anymore. Now that smells of
that's
question of, is there, and she detrimentally relied on the information that was provided to her by Fenn and went to the other location, forfeiting the area that she was already looking in, and she was on the right track. Now you also have to prove that the treasure truly was there. I mean, again, it's like, it's so many if when, that you have to answer. And if you can answer all of those successfully, then you would have a legitimate lawsuit.
Well, but you're saying the key piece, you need to know where it was actually found then. McCracken actually tried to subpoena Jack. Yellowstone intervened and said he's not allowed to say where it was found because it was found in our jurisdiction. And the superintendent, the head person at Yellowstone, said, I had a Zoom meeting with both Forrest and Jack. They are not to disclose the location. So he tried to do that. And then there's a video of Forrest going over the solution. McCracken tried to get the video, and they said that is I don't know the legal term they used. That is not. No, you're not allowed to do it because that's under the Joint Defense Agreement. That is protected. You're not allowed to have it. So this is where I say that McCracken tried to get from the two people, Forrest on a video or Jack. The government intervened, and he couldn't get it because it's under a certain legal umbrella that you can't, or shield. So who then can you get it from?
Right. And that's the question.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next one. So Aaron Murphy asks, do we know what the ancient Egyptian object is? I'm guessing it's like in the treasure.
I have no
Anybody know
idea
the
what that
answer?
means. I don't know
Nobody
that.
has any
I don't
idea.
know the
Okay,
answer.
No,
moving on to the next question. Asks if there was fraud on Forrest's part and the treasure didn't exist, or if it was real and it was found. What were the incentives for saying it has been found and ending the hunt? Well, I think I can answer that one. That's fairly easy. So that people would stop looking. I mean, because now you have definite fraud of a treasure that has already been recovered and found, and now you have all these people who are continuing to look on the assumption that there is something to find. Now that is clear fraud. That is the easiest, I think, definition of fraud that you could find. Davio22 says, Hilary, did you use Forrest Fenn's ideas for, I'm guessing, your own book for the hints and clues on the Xavier Marks?
So here's what I have to say. So Sean and I have decided we're not going to respond to any specific questions about the treasure hunt. We took a clue from Forrest, and we want to be totally fair to everyone. So,
So no barbecues at your house on Saturdays and Sundays? Is that out of the question here, Hilary?
Yeah, that's out of the question. But so it's a great question. And, we were, to do the treasure hunt, we were influenced by all the ones that came before us, some really great ones. My partner is obsessed with The Secret treasure hunt. You guys should look that up. It's fascinating. 40 years ago, this guy had like 12 casks and only 3 have been found. So, but I'll have to say, we intended this hunt to be solvable. So we did not think it would go on this long. I will say that much. And how
long has it been going on so far?
We're coming up on a year. And Sean, my partner, said, oh my God, it's going to be found the first day. He was so scared. But the celebrities that are shouting out hints, they're going to get, the clues are going to get better and better, because we do want this to be solved so we can move on to our next treasure hunt.
Okay. Okay, I think we already answered that one. Aaron Murphy asking the same question a different way. I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer to that either. That's a good question.
It's some sort of like, you start naming statutes from other states, I'm gonna ignore you. No offense.
So a 998 offer, by the way, is like an offer under Rule 67 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, an offer to take a judgment and compromise.
Sorry, I fell asleep there for a second, John.
Sorry about that. Sorry. It's lawyer geek stuff, and I'm like dozing off. This is terrible. I even bore other lawyers. Okay, so there's a concept of an offer to compromise.
This is for me and John. How do you Foia a Zoom meeting between Jack and Yellow? I don't think you can. I'm sorry.
You cannot. That is why it's done via Zoom. They made sure there was not a paper trail. I've Foia'd Yellowstone and many others several times. Yeah.
Go fish, right?
Now they did. There's been a recent Foia, and it just resulted. It was just a couple days ago that the schedule of the head of the superintendent, her name's Sarah Davis, and it shows up on her schedule that it happened, but the details of it was not recorded, from what I understand.
The sassy is throwing in some gasoline on the fire. She's saying,
do it.
I haven't been working on it yet, Hilary.
Well, you keep not working on it, please, Sassy. Okay. Yeah. I'd like it to go on a little bit longer to raise more money for the foundation, please.
Here's another one. Newbie asks, did I read the books? I did not. No, I just got, I got summoned to this like 2 weeks ago, and I thought it would be fun for everybody. Miss Megan asks, was he, I'm guessing Fenn, worried about people amping up the harassment against his family or potentially the finder? It's hard to decide to get everyone riled up like that, so the secrecy makes sense even if it's frustrating. Was Fenn worried about people amping up the harassment? I mean,
after you have your grandchild almost kidnapped on several occasions. I was actually I was visiting Forrest the day that this gentleman, his name's Paco, was out of jail, and they had somebody that was going to kind of tail him to make sure he didn't go back after the granddaughter, and the PI lost him. There was a miscommunication, and it was a challenging situation. It was such a personal, real. I asked Forrest, I was like, should I leave, because this was very intense for the family? He's like, no, because the gate bell rang, and he's like, I may need a witness here. And I was like, no. It was very scary for that. Wow. And that was only a very small glimpse of the stuff. So part of me would not blame him if he said, like this email that he wrote, and he did that when he was considering calling it off, he never thought people were going to die. He never thought someone would think his granddaughter was, I mean, somebody took an axe, we call him Axeman in the community. They broke through his gate and they took an axe to a door to get in because he thought his grandson lived in a little casita and he thought it was in the casita. And he found this chest and it was full of laundry, but that's where he thought it was. And there's a police cam where they get him by gun and hold him down until he comes. So, yeah.
Wow.
I'd like to respond to the last one, John. You're very welcome, John Smith, who thanked us for coming on. This is great for me because I get to talk to my husband. We've been married 30 years. So, yeah, we don't talk anymore.
We're not even in the same place right now.
Right. So, yeah, you're welcome, John. Smith.
Well, I wanted to thank you all. Literally, I don't know if you all can see. If I move to the spot where I was sitting this entire time, do you see? Like my face is, you can't see
You're
my
in
face.
the sun.
I'm being blinded by the sun over here. So I have to like trying to keep dodging it. I wanted to thank you all for joining me. Again, this was a very impromptu, unexpected stream. Hilary, is it Genga?
Ganga.
Genga.
Yeah.
Hilary Genga reached out just spontaneously.
It was the
told me
Curious
about
George
this.
thing. It was the Curious George.
She watched the Curious George. She's like, all right, he's obviously he might like this stuff, and I did. I heard the story. We had a phone conversation. I said, come on stream, let's talk about it. Let's why the heck not? I like adventure. I personally, in case anybody's wondering, I will not be joining the treasure hunt, unfortunately. So at least not at this juncture. Maybe some point in the future, but right now.
But Larry, will you represent Pranksy, the criminal in my book? He needs representing against the museum.
Absolutely. He has my number, my retainer. I can send him an agreement, and he can sign it. I'm down.
So also, Larry, I want to thank you because I've just in the last couple of last few months, I've learned about all these what they call these law tubers like you. And you're bringing the law to the people, so and I think making it understandable and accessible to people. I think that's great.
At least trying.
Yeah,
Larry,
Thank
my
you.
initial mission was to before all this, I knew what LawTube was. I just started a channel many years ago, and I started pumping content like 4 or 5 years ago. My initial tagline, it actually might still be in my about page, is to show the state that our criminal the disastrous state in where our criminal justice system is, because I get to live and practice in it every day, essentially. And I appreciate that, John. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd like to
Right,
tell
keep up
the
the good work.
searchers that are in Larry's room right now, please, Larry's great. Subscribe, like it. That helps the algorithm, right? And so please do that. And I really want to thank Christy for being a good sport and being on with me. She's got a great YouTube show about treasure hunts, the cow lasers. And of course,
what's your channel, Kris?
It's Cow Lasers, COWLAZARS. My husband was into Bob Lazar's, which is the UFO guy. And so it was in our last name. So between that, he started it way back, kind of like what you were saying. He started way back a treasure hunt or a channel just with his coffee. And he used to do 5-minute, here's what I think of the chase. So yeah, it's been interesting. It's been fun. We're kind of taking a break a little bit because it's conspiracies right now. And it's a lot of people with some really strong opinions. Like somebody said, we have nothing new. We weren't going to get anything new with this stream, guys. We were going to analyze it in different ways. And, it's tough. This ending's tough.
But Kris has been great. And I want to thank my husband, John. I know he plays a little.
Of course you would. He's your husband. You're going to be thanking him. Come on, Hilary. I'm totally unbiased here.
No, he's done some very high profile and landmark cases. I think the main one being the Vanna White robot case. But yeah, so the more money he makes, the more money I can hide around the country, right, sweetheart?
There you go. I'm the one that's writing the $10,000
That was the anti-plug
check,
of all plugs, Hilary. Like now he has zero motivation to continue working because you're just gonna bury it somewhere in the country.
That's funny.
Right.
But this has been great fun, and I am going to leave you guys with a cliffhanger. This is for a whole nother show. there is for you people that know DB Cooper, there's a connection between him and Forrest Fenn, but that's for
I didn't say that. I did not say that. She's
Okay, on that note, thank you all for joining me.
Thanks,
for the
Larry.
guests. Thank you, chat. And I will see you all in the next live video.
Thanks,
Everybody.
Bye.